Hi, my name is Anna Chaplin, and I did a speech on Janis Joplin. On stage, I make love to 25,000 people. Then I go home alone. This is one of my favorite quotes by Janis Joplin. I think it gives us a look into how much pain she kind of suffered and like how alone she felt as a person. A lot of times when we look at famous people, we don't see them as people, but we see them as um, just stars or icons, someone we want to be like. We don't see that they're human. Um, in this speech, I kind of would like to give a look at the rise and fall of Janis Joplin. Not only see Janis Joplin the legend, but the Janis Joplin for the person she was, and give an understanding of why she came to such a tragic downfall. Um, we'll look at how she rose to fame, how she's straight, and then how she strayed into such a dark path that eventually led to her demise. I was really amazed by the research that I found on her. I was kind of saddened too to see some of the stories and things that she went through. Janis Joplin was born in Port Arthur, Texas in 1943. Port Arthur was a small oil refinery town at that time. She went to high school there. Janis ended up suffering from acne and weight problems, which made it hard for her to fit in. Most of her life, she had a hard time fitting in and being accepted, and this ultimately led to a lot of her personal difficulties, unhappiness, her loneliness. It all started in high school and never really stopped. Um, Janis found refuge from life in music, art, and literature, music, of course, being her favorite. After high school, Janis went off to Lamar College in Beaumont, Texas, but it only lasted for 2 semesters. Janis started playing blues music in college at coffee shops, and then later relocated to San Francisco, where she continued to play there. While she broke into the music scene, though, is when she really began to drink really heavily, and they called her one of the boys. She could drink just like a man at that time, which was rare, I guess. And she also began to experiment with drugs, amphetamines being her favorite because they helped her lose weight, and her weight problem was always something she struggled with. In 1965, she decided to go home after hitting a low of 88 pounds. She decided she wanted to clean up her life, get sober, kind of change things. She was kind of sick of living the druggy life. After sobering up, Janis enrolled at University of Texas in Austin in an arts program. The college was short-lived. After being there for a while, she had the same insecurities and same problems she had in high school. She had a lot of kids picked on her, and she was, insecure. And I had actually read a story where it said that a fraternity tried to run a campaign to have Janis elected ugliest guy in college, and they ran on they ran this campaign to try to make everyone elect her the ugliest guy on campus, and they ran it in a newspaper, the college newspaper, and had some kind of party or something. It was just really a horrible story. It was a really cruel thing to do. But music was always a sanctuary for Jenna, so when things began to get rough, she went back into music, and she joined a trio called the uh, Waller Creek Boys they're from Austin, Texas. This is when she really began to develop her harsh and raspy voice she became so famous for. Um, while she was playing with the trio in 1966, she was approached about playing with a band called Big Brother and Holding Company in San Francisco. They asked her to be their lead singer, and she accepted to move to San Francisco to join the band. The band traveled all over California with many little gigs. Their breakout performance though came at Monterey, California on June 16th through the 18th. There was a festival there. It was a Love and Peace Festival. This Janis's band, Big Brother and Holding Company, was one of the few breakout. This is one of the few people that end up being headliners from this performance. There was also Simon and Garfunkel were there, Jefferson Airplane, The Who, and Jimi Hendrix. But Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin's band, Big Brother and Holding Company, ended up being the biggest performers out of there. So big that Big Brother was signed to Columbia Records after the festival to meet the demands of the fans. During 1967-1968, Big Brother developed a pretty successful tour They traveled all over, and they finally landed in New York. A dream of Janis's, I guess, from on February 18th of 1967. Although her rise to fame was happening quickly, things were still the same internally for Janis. Janis was still dealing with her self-esteem problems, heavy drug usage, and heavy drinking. Although she did say one time that only place she ever felt like home was on stage. Big Brother and Holding Company released a second album in 1968 called Dope, Sex, and Cheap Thrills. The album title was shortened to Cheap Thrills because of its provocative title. But the billing now read for the band Janis Joplin and Big Brother and Holding Company. And with the expanding of the name, ego started to flare. The band was not happy about Janis becoming the head, pretty much the lead singer, becoming the band. She was bigger than the band, and the band decided to break up in December of 1968. The egos weren't the only problem when they broke up. The drug usage among the whole band had increased as the income did. There was a lot of jealousy, and people were angry at each other, so everyone went their own separate ways. Janis decided to move on, but was still plagued with her low self-esteem. She still felt alone, the loneliness, and started doing heroin pretty heavily. Heroin and alcohol seemed to be her sidekicks throughout her career to deal with her depression. Janis soon joined another band called Janis, and it was billed as Janis Joplin and the Cosmic Blues Band. They released an album that went gold. It was called I Got Some Old Cosmic Blues Again, Mama. It was released in 1969. Although the album went gold, the band only stayed together for like a year. In 1970, Janis reunited with Big Brother and a Holding Company to do a reunited concert on April 4th. After that, she started working on her new band called Full Tilt Boogie. This is actually did an interview, and she had talked about all this a few weeks before she had died. She was really excited about the band because she felt it was going to finally best reflect her voice. Janis's career was soaring, and the outlook was good for her. To the fans and to people, it looked like she had gotten her drug problem under control. But anyone that really knew Janis knew that it was a constant demon always haunting her, and it was never really under control. It was something she was always having to deal with. Janis was found dead in her motel room at Landmark Hotel on October 4th in 1970. Janis had died from an accidental heroin overdose. The story is pretty interesting, and it's a little gruesome. If you want to look it up, I don't go into details though because it was a little gruesome how she died. She was 27 years old. Janis later had a Pearl album that was released after her death. And it ended up being the best-selling album of 1971. Janis Joplin was a legend, and Janis Joplin was a person. Someone that grew up to make music that not only changed the style of women singers in the 1960s, but changed the way that people looked at women. Janis was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1995. She was always considered one of the boys when it came to drinking and doing drugs, and even in her personal life, which led to a lot of self-esteem issues and a lot of sad and lonely nights. I think one of the saddest things about Janis Joplin's death is not that she died at such a young age. I think that because if she had lived longer, she probably wouldn't have been made as big an impact as she did. I think the saddest thing that had to be about Janis's death is Janis died alone in her room, the way she lived alone. Thank you.